Welcome to the Decode. We have no clue the formality of how to start a podcast or what to say or who should go first, but we thought today we'd want to do, before we have a guest on, a brief introduction of each other and how we met and some of the things that we like learning and stuff like that. And so I'm Sean Kincaid. I'm president of K&F Electronics. And Elias, do you want to go next?
Yeah, Elias Malpavon here, president of Metal Edge Services.
And I'm Daniel Stanfill. I am an SMT process engineer at Aurora Boardworks in Aurora, Nebraska.
I guess we'll just start off with how I got into the circuit board world, right? My grandfather started a circuit board company in 1972, and we manufactured boards in-house up until 2021. And ever since I was 5 years old, I was walking plating decks with my dad, and I loved it. What I loved the most about circuit boards was the manipulation of copper, right? To me, it was amazing to watch this sheet of copper-clad laminate, and it starts off as one solid piece of copper, and then throughout the process, you're etching away and you're plating up and you're moving certain areas, and you almost have in the early 2000s, it was like 90% of that copper panel was removed. And it was amazing to me that it could be moved so much, and yet just these little lines of copper, these traces and these little holes and these little pads, and then you'd see a final product light up and work and control power and stuff like that. And it was just amazing to me. People would ask me, what do you do for a living, right? I tell them I make circuit boards, I manufacture circuit boards, and they'd be like, they give you that blank look. What do you mean, right? And I'd be like, first I would start off with like a little green chip that, like, if you smash your cell phone, right, there's like those green chips in there. That's what I make. And if they started to ask me how or whatever, I would just say, I manipulate copper. That's what I do, right? Like, take a piece of copper and I cover it up and I put stuff over it, and then I take it off and I put it back on. And that was fantastic for me. I know in 2018, we were thinking about getting into the assembly business, and my dad kept asking me, what do you think, should we start or not? And so I had no clue, right? We were worried about possibly losing some business from that, and so I just did what I do on default on tough options, right? So I prayed about it, and I kept hearing no, and I heard no for many years, and then 2020 came around, and I finally heard yes for the first time. And I thought it was maybe a fluke, maybe just a one-time off thing, but I kept praying, and I heard yes. And so we got in the ball. We got into the PCBA. We were hoping to generate more revenue on the circuit board side to keep that going, but we just couldn't find the demand for the rush 24-hour board and assembly jobs. And we had to move over just doing full assembly and PCB design now. And the SMT part is a whole different animal, completely clean, but man, the attention to detail that has to get done with that, right? There's some variations you can have with the IPC specs for circuit boards, but for assembly part of it, the 610As is totally a lot more stringent, right? And you're dealing with such small, finer packages, and that's like when I talk to Elias and Daniel about this stuff, is I'm blown away at their capability of being able to just manipulate a piece of metal like you do with stencil, right? And all of a sudden I have no more defects, right? That's crazy to me. So that's my story, that's my background, and that's where I am today. And that's all I got, I guess. Elias,
do you have a family?
I got a family. I'm super tired right now. I just had my second child. First one was a boy. This one's a girl. My son is almost 2 years old, and I thought I'd have a better handle on it because I already have been through this process once with one child, right? And I severely underestimated the activity level of a toddler, right? Just completely underestimated how busy this guy is, how much a newborn just needs to be on your chest all the time, right? So, and that's why I'm wearing the white t-shirt, because she might spit up on my nice shirts. So we're gonna wear what we're wearing today. Daniel, do you want to go?
Sure, I can go next. So I'm the baby of the group. That should be obvious, but 37 for a few more weeks. And says here, I have a wife named Jessica. Probably should have notes for that. We've been married since 2010. Started dating in 2003 when we were in high school. Got two girls, Isabella and Kiara, 4 and 6 years old. I used to paint houses. I painted houses for about 15 years. Moved from Lincoln, Nebraska, out here about an hour away to the country. And I was doing new construction there in Lincoln. And when I moved out here, totally just shifted my entire business, handed my employees over to another buddy, and did everything by myself out here. Got to be winter times and I couldn't really do it too well anymore. Keep super busy just doing one room here and there type of thing. So started looking just for a temporary gig just to get me a solid check through the winter, and ended up here at Aurora Boardworks. Ended up loving it. Started out as a pick and place operator. Literally had never seen, heard one. I had no idea what they were. Was very interested in them on the first interview. No question about that. I remembered everything about the interview. The tour of the facility was, it was like getting to step inside of a How It's Made episode. Just, you don't know anything about this stuff, and then all of a sudden you get to see all the different machinery involved and how it gets done. And I thought that was pretty cool. And so yeah, started pick and place, really enjoyed that. We made a lot of upgrades pretty quickly after I started, and I got to learn a lot of other machinery pretty quickly after that, like a laser marker and selective solder, a few others. But the cool thing about that was just like all the variety, just whatever needed to be done. I would just hop from machine to machine, either programming the new job or running the production, whatever needed to be done. And I really enjoy learning about all the different machines. So over time, got to be where I could program pretty much all of them, and took over lots of those responsibilities and shifted from a production role to maintenance and IT. And then over time, the SMT lines kind of just kept, the demand there kept growing and growing, and my focus and attention would shift more and more to that area. So eventually they hired another person to take over maintenance duties so I could focus just full time on helping streamline the processes and help get NPI more established and stuff like that. So that's the main crux of what I do now, is try to optimize our existing jobs through the SMT lines, or work on getting a new job out on the floor and try to get it as good as we can on the very first rev. So that's kind of long and short of what I do here.
I can't think of any questions that would be as hurtful as the one that you did when I forgot my wife and children. So I was really hoping
I had
to
a stabbing fear that I had, and then I looked and I was like, "Oh no, there they are in my notes." Thank goodness I had my notes. So,
well, I'm going to learn from your mistake and start out with the family intro. So, my name's Elias. I guess I'm the elder statesman of the group at a whopping 40. These guys don't let me forget it either. I've been married since 2006, so rounding the corner to 20 years here. My wife's name is Rebecca. I have 3 kids, twin daughters that are 10, and then a son that's not far behind at 9. So we went from 0 to real busy in a hurry. So I have roots in stencil manufacturing that go way back, kind of a similar story to Sean, maybe missing one generation. But my dad worked in stencil manufacturing since I could remember. So I would go in to work with him a day here and there as a kid. And back then it was chemical etching. So there weren't lasers producing stencils yet. It was all chemical etch process. And I thought it was fascinating. Piece of metal would go in one side and it would come out the other side and it had holes in there. How does that happen? So that was cool. And I was around it quite a bit, but I didn't start working in stencils right away. I actually did a stint in retail grocery and thought that was going to be my career for a while. And that's actually how I met my wife. We both worked in the same grocery chain. I guess I didn't come out of that empty-handed. And shortly after that, my dad and my aunts and uncles started Metal Etch Services in 2005. And pretty quickly after they started up, I just started helping out here. It was, I guess, a volunteer gig, if you will. And things started going pretty well. And And my pops was like, "Do you want to work here? There could be a future for you here." And I was in a pretty decent spot where I was, and it was kind of felt like a risk going into a startup, but nevertheless, I made the plunge. I did both jobs for a little bit and never turned back from there. So I've done all kind of different functions here, which I appreciate sitting where I do now because I have intimate knowledge of every single process underneath this roof, everything from chemical etching to laser to procurement, everything. When I started, it was 5 of us. I was literally employee number 5. So you wear a lot of hats, whether you like it or not. And in those times, like I said, I appreciate the experience and the knowledge that I gained throughout that time. And I just really enjoy the challenges that are inherent of surface mount. And I love talking to customers and just prospective customers and other folks, anybody that'll talk to me about what they're experiencing and seeing in their process and what kind of challenges they face. And I love collaborating with people and knowing what they've tried and what they haven't tried, and just figuring out how to really optimize and solve for challenges, because if you solve it once, chances are that you'll be able to help out the next person with the same fix. So
teaching stubborn Michiganders beyond shapes and rectangles.
Exactly.
Squares and rectangles. Yeah, you got to learn. There's more shapes than just those two.
Hey, man, they have worked tried and true for a long time. But I'll tell you what, we did have rework, and then Elias did change some things. I won't say what he changed, but he changed some things, and now I don't have those rework anymore. So
what's funny about a lot of features or modifications that you see touted as having benefit, a lot of them are rooted in, well, that's just how it was. Like, for instance, everyone will tell you, or a lot of people in the know will tell you, well, you need to apply X radius to all your pads, right? What we're just poking at Sean for. Well, when stencils were made via chemical etch, you don't have a choice but to radius. You can't put a hard 90 in a chem etch feature. Whatever your foil thickness is, that's going to be your minimum corner radius, because etching attacks in all directions. So whatever you go down, you go out. I don't probably know that pretty well. So
yeah, I'll pretend I'm following all that for sure.
If you could find a chem etch stencil with a hard 90 on it, I'd call you a liar. So again, things that were inherent of processes that people found out, wow, this is actually a benefit, aids in release.
The new etchers for circuit boards, though, they do have a vacuum with it. So that overspray you would see, and the outward, like a car wash, when you take a power hose to it, or your power washer to it just sprays everywhere, right?
Right.
So now it hits that targeted area and gets sucked up. So it reduces the over etch. So you might be able to do your 90 on the stencil today. I don't know.
Maybe, but
Maybe.
no reason.
Under a microscope, probably not, right?
Well, I know there's probably a million topics like that we're going to be getting into on this podcast, right? But one of the things I think we need to cover is why we wanted to do this, right? So I wrote down a couple things for that too. One, it's supposed to be super easy, right? Anyone can do this. We're going to prove that. I expect we should be getting rich beyond our wildest imaginations from this, right? Pretty easily. And fame, fortune, all that kind of stuff. That's what I expect.
Yeah.
But you did agree to donating to charity from it, right? Remember, we had that conversation.
I said, however much of your percent, I'm good with whatever you wanted to do. I absolutely support that.
I guess we should probably discuss how the heck a 40-year-old dude from California and a Michigander and somebody from the plains of Nebraska come to even become acquaintances, let alone try to embark on producing a EMS-based podcast.
Sure. The short story is it's Sean's fault.
Yeah.
It typically is.
Yeah.
In a good way. Can we say that?
Yes.
It
A
turned
beautiful
out,
disaster. Is that comes to mind?
and it's also one of my previous suppliers, stencil suppliers' fault, right? That,
Or else you never would have.
that didn't, because our Elias isn't, my first conversation stopped right away, right after he told me what the price was going to be. And I said, no, I get it for way cheaper. And then Mr. Way Cheaper tried to raise my price. And then we started talking, and that carried on from there. But at that point, we had established, I don't know about you, Elias, but there's nobody posting like Daniel posts out there, right? His love and passion for what he's learning, even if it may seem basic to the experts out there, and I'm sure people love to critique every single word he puts into his post. And but to me, it was such a refreshment of, oh great, another wind powered post, right? Oh great, another social marketing guy posting, right? It was like over, and then all of a sudden I see this guy and he's like, hey, here's a selective solder running, watch this as it almost hits this part. That's the stuff I love. That's what I'm here for on LinkedIn. That was cool.
Absolutely. After Sean and I initially connected, what attracted me to Sean is he posted a video, which I thought was a pretty well-made video, showing his shop and some of the recent improvements they made with new equipment, and it looked like $1 million. And I was kind of going through a similar experience here. We were refitting our laser room and adding an additional laser machine. So I was like, oh, that's funny. Popped into my feed, and I said, yeah, I understand the work that goes into that and some of the stresses. So I'm going to give this guy an attaboy. I didn't know him from Adam. So I just sent him a message and said, hey, shop looks great. I appreciate that. Going through a similar type deal. Good work. And I remember the introduction a little bit differently.
I remember Sean commented on a post I did. He recognized the pick and place. We've got the same model, and we're both Europlacer enthusiasts. So he recognized that I was touting the joys of running one of the machines, and so commented on there, knew what it was. And as soon as I was like, there's somebody out there who runs one of these and wants to talk about it, it was like, all right, here we go. And then we started chatting about all things SMT mostly, and eventually he told me there was somebody else we were going to need to add to the chat, and I was pretty reluctant. I told him I felt like I'd made enough friends in my life, but he kind of forced Elias on me, and thankfully he did, because the three of us pretty much chat all the time about industry and life, and that's another big reason I think all of us have been super interested in doing this podcast is we all get the opportunity to learn from each other, different kind of sectors, different niche, different spots of the industry. There's some overlap between Sean and I for sure, but we all have an understanding of what the other one does. I have much better understanding after Elias's classes he held for me yesterday, but I just think it's a good excuse to hang out and share our interests and passion for what we do every day as a job, and hopefully learn a lot as we go and get to bring. I've already talked about tried not to tell too many people, and especially since we hadn't actually recorded anything yet, didn't want to get too far ahead of it, but had just gently talked to people about the idea, hey, if we ever did start a podcast, would you be interested? I don't know if they're just blowing smoke or lying, but everyone I've talked to about it, I don't know about you guys, but everyone I've talked to is like, oh, you guys have to do that. It'll be great. We need it. We need more of those type of podcasts. We need it.
I liked in the beginning. So Elias is a stencil guy, right? I'm a board guy dressed in a ESD smock today, right? That's basically what I am. And Daniel's a PCB assembly guy, right? When I have questions about my machine, Daniel's the guy I go to. Hey, what do you think about this process? And had an issue last week. I texted you pictures and said, hey, did you ever see this before? And he likes to show off his fancy extra tools that he has, his offsite camera programming that I'm super jealous of, and his matrix tray. Just throws in the parts and they just randomly pick up. Doesn't matter about orientation or how they are. The machine knows what they are, and I'm jealous. So I am getting that installed though on my next service agreement. But I'm mostly excited for honestly interviewing these guests we're gonna have. Right? These are I know it's not like a superstar Michael Jackson or somebody crazy famous.
Well, right?
But some of these people that we have on this list,
Titans,
just the people I look up to in industries, and it's so hard to be an expert in this industry because even if you are, right, it's short-lived. You have to stay up on top of it all the time, right? So it's a constant game of learning in here, and to be able to interview these people just to get a background on their life, right? And then I'm sure we could come up with some random questions that we all want to know about. Hey, this is the process, or hey, we have an example of we're doing this or whatever, and learning from them. That to me was pretty cool.
I think just in some of our interactions with these folks on LinkedIn and some of the breakout sessions we've had, man, it's just so energized. Doing this for as long as I have, you get into these periods where there's not too much new, or there's not too many people challenging you or making you think critically. And talking with some of these folks, it's like, wow, you really see how much knowledge is out there to share, and getting into some of these friendly sparring matches with these brilliant folks. I got to sharpen my pencil, and I really appreciate
that. I work on at least 5 or 6 different machines regularly. There's some of the guys that we're talking about that we talk to, they've dedicated their entire life to the art of one thing, essentially. Right. There's so much expertise there. I just think that's one of the coolest things since joining LinkedIn and getting on, because I've actually never even had a single social media. I've never actually been active on another social media site ever. So joining one like this and the access you have, I live in the middle of Nebraska. It's not like there's just process experts falling out of the woodwork out here, but you can talk to people from Germany or Scotland or wherever, and they just know all kinds of stuff. It would take you decades to learn, and sometimes they're willing to just share it with you because you show an interest.
Didn't even talk about our initial foray together. About that was how Daniel and I started communicating. I think I hijacked one of his posts, and I sent him a message saying, I hope I didn't hijack your post. And then I didn't talk to him for a while. And then that's when we brought up Sean and I started talking about the thumbs up board. And that's when Daniel came in, and Sean was like, well, why don't you ask Daniel? I hardly know the guy. You guys have an open love affair on LinkedIn. Why don't you ask him? And you're like, he's been radio silence with me or something. I don't remember exactly.
He's really hard to deal with.
Because I remember like seeing kind of the same stuff all three of us do now, but seeing that when it was just a duo instead of a trio, and thinking like, how are these guys affiliated? What's the connection here? Are they both reps for the same company, or what's going on?
The love of Europlacer and with Daniel, the selective solder is just unbelievably mesmerizing, and the joy you get from developing a hard program, right? And barely coming by these tiny components that it's going to be tough to rework if this tip hits that, right? And that's what his posts were about, right? And just the pain points and the joys that no one else ever talks about.
There's not much of that in the space. You don't see many people talking about specific challenges or running their equipment, or I don't know.
I feel like there's kind of being new to it. I'm so new to it. There's no point in pretending I'm some seasoned veteran with all this experience, right? So I just come right out with it like, hey, I'm new. What do you know? But it seems like most people are too insecure to admit from their position that there's something they don't know, or that it's a poor reflection of the company they represent if there's something they don't know. But none of us know everything. You know what I mean? That's dishonest too, to try to pretend like, oh, I obviously knew that already all the time. Everyone's got to learn something sometime, right? Dishonest too, to try to pretend like, oh, I obviously knew that already all the time. Everyone's got to learn something sometime, right?
Yeah, and
you start from somewhere.
Perfect example was your jet printer versus screen printer, right? Why would anyone use a screen printer, right? Just
the listening audience might not be familiar with that, but when I first started, I definitely thought jet print. We had a super old school semi-automatic screen printer and what I considered state-of-the-art jet printer. And it's like, to me, it was very clearly, this is the old school, the way they did it back in horse and buggy time. And now this is what we do with automation. Literally, who needs stencils? But I learned a little bit because I basically shared that opinion with that much fervor online and was met with a lot of vitriol, and was pretty quickly educated on how wrong I was. So why not live and learn, grow? why not live and learn, bro?
If you don't talk about it, you'll be in your own head thinking you're doing the right thing all the time, right? And you just never know when you meet somebody who knows differently.
You got to let your guard down in order to learn anything new. And to be fair, it can be tough because there's a certain type of person on some of these platforms that's just there to assassinate you. And I can think of a specific
waiting
example.
for that mistake.
and so you could be a bit nervous about taking that public flogging, but there's as many or more people that are just genuinely there to have a conversation, to tell you what they know. And that's the thing that I think is the most exciting, is that there's so many people that, given the opportunity, they will share every single bit of knowledge they have with you because they're excited, they're passionate about it. They spend years learning this and developing and have all kind of.
And what's strange to me is it seems like not everyone is passionate about it. I love it, so it doesn't make sense. Who is not fascinated by a brand new stencil and the way the first print off of it looks like? It's like magic, right?
Yeah.
Who doesn't love that? I don't get it. But
you start to see those lines in it, and you're like,
guys, I've got 3% left on my battery. I think it's probably as good a place as any to officially end this episode. I enjoyed it tremendously. Think we did great. Hope to do it again soon. That's me signing off.
All right.
Adios.
Till next time.
Until next time.